Hey, it's Nina, your Trinity Life Coach, coming to you with some beauty for the Spirit with your weekly word. This week's word comes from Luke chapter 9, verse 57, the NIV translation, and it says, I will follow you wherever you go. Now, before we even begin to understand what it means to follow Christ, we have to understand what following Christ meant in this context. In this particular context, a follower of Christ would have been a disciple, okay? And a disciple was basically a person that imitated the life, adopted the values and the customs and the faith of their teacher or rabbi, okay? So if you read this whole passage, you'll see that there's a couple of men who are wanting to be disciples of Christ, and Jesus doesn't sugarcoat his response to them. Today, most of the people who carry the banner or the name of Christian are not necessarily followers of Christ, because they don't necessarily adopt the values and the beliefs of Christ. We don't always do that. Why? Because sometimes the values of Christ and his faith, they go against our personal belief. And so we've made a religion, and we've made rules that, we follow. And so we basically just follow ourselves. We've made up a religion that makes sense in our own head and makes sense in our own heart. We're following our own wisdom. We don't necessarily follow Christ. So in order to truly follow Christ, we have to lose ourselves. I know, it sucks. But we have to be so lost that all we can do is follow. Have you ever been in a situation where you're just so completely lost that you just had to swallow your pride and follow someone else who knew exactly what they were doing? In that moment, you have to admit that this other person knows best, and you just have to lose your pride and say, you know what, I'll follow you. Whatever you do, I'll do. It's in those moments that we do lose ourselves a bit, and when it comes to following Christ, our own identities have to be so gone, so lost, that people can only characterize us as followers of Christ. So, have you lost yourself? Well, a good way to kind of to know if you truly lost yourself um, is to think about your priorities. Do you have a list of dreams and goals and ambitions, priorities that are coming before following Christ? Now, following your dreams, I'm a fan of. I think we all should do it. I feel like God wants us to do that. But when those things come before God, that's when, we're wrong there. Oswald Chambers says, no earthly call is actually higher than the invitation to follow Christ. And I think that's true. So if you're wondering where your priorities lie, just think about how people describe you. Okay, this should be a good indicator. So if people are like, oh, you know what? Lisa, she's awesome. She's an awesome musician. She's played at this show. She's written with these people. She's amazing. She has a great voice. And yeah, I think she's Christian, yeah. Or Ben, he's an amazing athlete. He's won this award. He's been on this TV show. Yada yada yada. Um, well, he goes to church. He goes to church. Or maybe Lisa. Oh, Lisa. Now that's a woman of God. She follows the Lord. She loves Him. And she's also a wonderful writer. Okay, so you see how in those examples, for some people, to be a Christian was an afterthought. When people were describing them, their faith was an afterthought. It came after everything else. Um, so when people describe you, your faith is actually the last thing they say, or if they say it at all, or if it's an afterthought, then that could be a very good indicator of where your priorities are. And that's just something for you to chew on. Now, to the person who refuses to lose themselves to the point where they follow Christ wherever he goes, even if following Christ goes beyond their personal opinions, their personal values and beliefs, okay? What do you think Christ has to say to that? Well, if you continue to read the passage, and I do encourage you to do so, Jesus basically says, you know what? If I'm not number one, if you can't follow me in the truest sense and truly be my disciple, then you have no part of my kingdom. Ouch. I wish I could have sugarcoated that for y'all, but that's just the truth. That's what Jesus said. So that's your word for this week. Believe it, live it, and share it.